Hello everyone! Welcome to my channel, perhaps welcome back, especially if you have seen my previous video on this specific deck. Today I would like to give an updated deck tack on my Emiel the Blessed EDH/Commander deck list. My previous version on this channel, Poly Exclusion, you can see I have an hour and 10-minute plus video deep dive into pretty much every single deck slot in the entire deck. But this came out about a year ago, and I've made a lot of personal deck building growth. I think more innovation on this specific deck archetype, this flicker combo based archetype, and I've improved upon the deck so much that I think it warrants another video. And this is just a labor of love, a huge passion project for me. I love this deck so much, and I think even if you don't play this deck specifically, I think there's so much to learn from a deck building philosophy and how to get better as a deck builder, and also just a person who plays commander decks, both in the deck building and also just the deck playing phase. I think there's so much to learn. I think it's such an interesting case study. And this is the deck that I think I have the most experience with and expertise in. But before I get into some of the main changes and overhauls, I do want to emphasize that the prior video here that I'm flicking over to in my other tab is not necessary to watch. You don't need to watch this entire thing, and maybe you shouldn't because the deck list is a little bit outdated. But if you're really going to get into the weeds about this deck, maybe you'll find it interesting to watch this one in concert with the video I'm currently making, because you can maybe see a lot of the deck changes, or maybe even just, even if you don't watch the whole video, you could kind of just pause at certain sections and look at the deck list that I'm kind of showing, and you can see a lot of the deck changes and see how the deck list has grown and how I've innovated it. If you're interested, definitely not obligatory at all. I'm going to try to have this be pretty self-contained. A couple more disclaimers to get out of the way before I kind of go through this deck list. I'm not going to go through it card by card. I'm going to mainly discuss the most important category of cards, which are combo pieces. So I'm going to discuss how the deck is comboing, and then I'm going to later on, once we're kind of finished discussing the overall deck list, then I do want to goldfish some hands and show you in practice how the deck kind of operates, give a little bit of a mulligan guide, a playing guide, try to keep it a little bit brief, but hopefully have it service as a little bit of a proof to some of the claims that I'm going to make, like what turns this deck is trying to win on, and also just kind of see it in action to not keep things so theoretical. But before I get into all that, just a few disclaimers and things to mention to see if you would want to stick through this video and see if this is interesting to you. I want to emphasize who this deck is probably for. So just out on the outset, power level, right? Like what kind of deck are we trying to envision? So I am intending this to be essentially 8.5 or 9 out of 10 on the commonly used power scale for Commander, 10 being like full-blown CEDH in my opinion, 9.5 being fringe CEDH playable, and then 9 essentially being the top end of what you would consider casual Commander, whatever the heck that means. There's better metrics I'm going to get into in a second, but it's a flawed metric, the whole 10 power skill thing. Everyone jokes about how everything's a 7. This deck is definitely not a 7. But you know, with all its flaws, maybe that can boil down a lot of the complexities. Me saying that this is about an 8.5 or 9 is kind of showing you the power that I'm trying to envision. If that means nothing to you, no problem. It's a really bad metric. Probably a more informative thing to say is that, you know, what is the game plan of this deck? And also, I think most importantly, when am I trying to present a win? And how am I going about that win? So I've done a ton of playtesting. I mean, this has been a many-year project, a labor of love, you know, still in the works, but with all the playtesting I've done and innovations, the time in which this deck is trying to win, turn 3 is, by my counts, the earliest possible win attempt, and it is not regular in any way. So this deck will present wins on turn 3 extremely rarely. So not terribly worth commenting and past that. Turn 4 is a somewhat consistent, you know, somewhat consistent. It's a little bit vague, but you can somewhat consistently present a turn 4 win. Maybe it's protected, maybe it's not, through something like a Mother of Runes or Giver of Runes or something like that. But it's hard. So sometimes the deck can present turn 4 wins. Turn 5 is when I am very, very much expecting, if I haven't already presented something turn 3, turn 4, turn 5 is very much when I'm expecting the deck to be able to present a win. And I will be dissatisfied if the deck or the hand that I chose to kept on mulligans is not presenting a win. So that should give you an idea of the kind of the speed, the pace of the game that I'm trying to represent with this deck. That might be really the only disclaimer I really need to say. A little bit it's already in the title, right? So what is this? This is an Emiel Flicker combo deck. So this is, you know, Flicker, Blink, whatever you want to say. This is exiling and returning creatures to the battlefield for 3 generic mana for Emiel's effect, right? That's the thing that we're building around. And we're going to try to turn that into an infinite combo. There's many different lines to do that, but that is the crux of the deck. It is very much, very, very focused, extremely streamlined on this multiple different avenues of infinite flickers with Emiel. Right, that is the name of the game, and so you won't necessarily enjoy this. Maybe click away right now if you're not interested in building or learning from infinite combo deck. If that's not your thing, then this video won't be for you. The deck pretty much has no other way to win. I think it's safe to say. So I think that's probably all the disclaimers. Oh, actually, one more quick thing, if you guys will indulge me. I promise I'll get right into the deck tech right after this. One last thing I'd like to say is, you know, my Moxfield here, which I'm going over, is public, right? So many of my decks, almost all of them, are public, at least the ones I feel comfortable sharing and consider finished in some sense. So you're welcome to check the poly exclusion Moxfield channel if you want to kind of investigate some of my other decks or keep up to date with some decks. I've got 3 other tabs here for other decks that I have put an enormous amount of time in and feel they're about on the par of this deck. I don't think anything is quite as optimized as Emiel, but I want to throw these out there for people to either investigate in their own time or maybe request an entire video deck tech if you guys are interested on these other decks. So another one is a Raffine, I call it Raffine Reanimator Control. So this is a Raffine deck that is playing a pretty stacksy control creature-focused reanimation style deck with an infinite combo, which is not super focused. It's not really trying to go for the infinite combo with Sage of Hours. It's mainly trying to just value down, beat down people, and outvalue them in Esper. So that's a super fun deck. Another deck that I probably would love to make a very detailed deck on is Mono White Adeline. So this is a tempo Rule of Law stacks deck. So this is absolutely heavy stacks. Again, for casual. Not everyone enjoys stacks, and not everyone wants to play in a play group for stacks, but those play groups definitely exist. I'm in one of them. And so this might be for some people. Maybe I'll make a video down the line if people are interested. I've got a lot of thoughts on this deck specifically. And then maybe something a little bit more out there. So I've mentioned CDH a few times. I have a somewhat decently seen Jetmir CDH deck. I've put an enormous amount of time in trying to optimize this deck, and this is out there for people that may want to dip their toes or kind of see something different in CDH. This is very different from what a typical CDH deck looks like because it's trying to win through combat damage, and literally no one does that in CDH. So maybe I'll go down, maybe go through these decks in future videos if people request them. So definitely let me know down in the comment section. I'm definitely open to see. I'm open to making whatever kind of content people are interested in, especially when it's in my areas that I've put some time into thinking, developing. But with all that out of the way, let's actually dig into this deck. Apologize for the ado here. So, what is Emiel's game plan? This iteration of Emiel. So this is, like I said, a combo deck. So I've structured this Moxfield list to sort by what I'm considering the category of card, like what is the card functionally doing in the deck. I don't really understand why a lot of people will sort by mana value or even stranger card type. that stuff doesn't matter too much to me. I really want to focus on what is the functionality of the card in the deck, and I want to be able to easily see how many of those cards are serving that function. So specifically, I want to focus first on this combo stack here. And there's multiple different combos. And now I'm just realizing a better way to explain this is actually go to the primer. So I should have mentioned, I have a pretty brief but hopefully serviceable primer for this. So if people want to take this deck for a spin, you can kind of get the gist, the elevator pitch here of what the deck's trying to do. But to maybe help explain the combos with a little bit less clutter, I've got a bit of a bulleted point list here. So what is the main combo in this deck? The best combo, I would argue, the most consistent, easiest, least investment, easiest to do, is the Village Bellringer combo. So Village Bellringer for 3 mana at instant speed with flash. ETB, untap all creatures you control. How is that useful? Well, with Emiel in play and a Village of the Bellringer, obviously this gives you infinite mana if you have creatures that tap for net 3 plus mana, right? So more than 3 mana. If you have mana dorks or any other ways to tap creatures that generate more than 3 mana, then you generate infinite mana by flickering Village Bellringer over and over again. And then one would hope that they have an outlet for that mana, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Well, actually, maybe I should mention it now. Here it is. So the most common scenario for an outlet for this deck is by playing these cheap value creatures like Wall of Blossoms, Wall of Omens. There's tons of other creatures that do this that just have an incidental value thing for ETB, and they're designed to be cheap little things that you can cantrip in the early game if you need to just kind of dig through the deck and try to find pieces. But then they serve as this literal late game finisher, right? Where if you've got that Village Bellringer loop and you've got infinite mana, well, the most trivial, easy way to kind of translate that to a win is obviously just draw your deck. If you have your whole deck in hand and you have infinite mana, there's no reason why you can't win. I've got an entire section here in the primer of why am I not playing other potential outlets or win cons like Craterhoof Behemoth, and this is actually a really interesting deck-changing philosophy from my prior video. My last version of this deck was on Craterhoof. In fact, I was on even, in my opinion, more egregious deck decision slots like Elish Norn, the straight-up 7-mana Elish Norn, which has no flicker synergies, it's just a beatdown plan. And specifically focusing on Craterhoof, people might think, well, why the heck... God, I hate this art. I don't know why it defaults to this art in the primer specifically, but if we can stomach this disgusting art here for a second, it seems like such a natural include. Like, in Selesnya, if you're a creature-focused deck that, whether you're going infinite or not, Craterhoof is such an amazing card. Why would I not include it? The main reason is I'm really just trying to optimize deck slot efficiency. And Craterhoof, functionally, if you're not fairly casting it, by which I mean if you're not just hard casting Craterhoof, or even natural ordering into Craterhoof, and you're not going infinite, then it might not win you the game the turn it enters. It actually probably won't. And outside of even that fair casting scenario, it's just straight up a dead card pretty much always, right? Until you get to the mana for it, then it's a dead card, right? That's just how high mana spells work. Because this deck is so focused on not playing the fair game and just comboing kind of as quick as possible, or at least as quick as this power level is trying to win at, then Craterhoof is always a functionally dead, clunky card, even though it's such a strong card. And it's because the opportunity cost is kind of crazy when compared to something like Wall of Blossoms, or the many functional copies of this, where they are good outside of the combo, or they're not great outside the combo, right? Wall of Blossom is just a cantrip. It's fine outside the combo. It serves other purposes. It's not just a cantripping Wall of Blossoms. But then, you play this maybe turn 2, turn 3, or whatever, just kind of as your value engine to just kind of get to your other pieces. But then once you assemble the combo, now this do-nothing Wall of Blossoms is now your game-winning threat, where you just kind of infinitely flicker it. Right, so that's some of the philosophy there. I won't belabor that point anymore than I already have. So obviously this deck is focused heavily on creature dork. So I'm actually going to go away from the primer just for a second to go back to the deck list here. You can see my ramp package. It's extremely focused. Outside of like kind of one, maybe two exceptions, right? Aether Vial and maybe Nissa. Literally everything is a mana dork. There's no Soul Ring, there's no Mana Crypt, there's nothing like that. There's a very specific and intentional choice with this. I want all of my ramp to be mana dorks, and it's all focused essentially on, where is it? Village Bellringer, right? Village Bellringer really is the main combo piece. There are definitely other lines to winning the game, but Village Bellringer is kind of the most consistent way and my preferred way of winning, especially from a deck slot perspective. Again, I'm really trying to, as I've kind of gotten more mature with my deck building, at least in high power Commander, one thing I'm more and more thinking about is how to be efficient in my deck slots. Why waste a deck slot on Craterhoof, which is oftentimes feels like a dead card, when I can, Infinite Flickers of Craterhoof wins me the game. But Infinite Flickers of a Wall of Blossoms also wins me the game and does something on turn 2, which Craterhoof doesn't. Right? So that philosophy is being lent to every deck slot here, and it applies to something like Soul Ring, where Soul Ring is a great card for sure, but it's not a combo piece, right? I really like the fact that my 15 or so, or maybe 13 out of these 15, actually 14 out of these 15 cards, with the exception of Aether Vial, 14 of those 15 ramp slots are not just ramp slots. They're not just dead, quote-unquote dead ramp slots. They're also simultaneously combo pieces, which just makes the deck and specifically the Village Bellringer combo so enticing, because it really is just a one-card win gone. Emiel is a guarantee. Dorks are pretty much guaranteed. You should be mulliganing for them. And then Village Bellringer is your one-card win gone, right? Going back to the primer, let's talk about some secondary, tertiary type combos, because this is definitely a layered combo deck. There's many different lines. Another extremely clean combo, classic combo, is Devoted Druid Vizier of Remedies, right? So Vizier of Remedies negates the -1/-1 counter the Devoted Druid gives on itself, and therefore Devoted Druid, after you wear off Summoning Sickness, is just infinite green mana, which serves the same flickering infinitely times with Emiel to serve as a win. There's a extra combo piece in Swift Reconfiguration that was printed somewhat recently. I've recently cut this from the list. It's in my sideboard, which is a list of cards that continue to kind of come in and out of the deck. I don't know. Swift Reconfiguration is a great card on the list. I encourage you to try it. I've been kind of recently cutting it more for preference, because it is completely dead or almost completely dead if you don't have Devoted Druid. And I just don't love that. Again, thinking about deck slot efficiency, I want my combo pieces and non-combo pieces to be kind of always live in some sense. But it is also just the way to present the fastest wins. So by cutting it, you do sacrifice a lot of the nuts, so to speak, of having a turn 3 win. Like in a lot of my playtesting, almost all the turn 3 wins are Devoted Druid Swift Reconfiguration. Is a clean way to win on turn 3. It's not a consistent thing by any means, but it's just cute. But yeah, so there's an asterisk next to this. It's no longer in the deck list, but it may come back in. I'm not sure. But there's some more, some newer combos here on this fourth bullet point of not Village Bellringer or Devoted Druid shenanigans, but actually just haste enabling, right? So even in Selesnya, haste enabling is not easy, but it's possible through 2 cards, right? So Surik and Goreclaw and Concordant Crossroads both just give generic haste to our creatures, pretty much generic haste. Concordant Crossroads is a stellar magic card in this deck, and it took me quite a while to get around to Surik and Goreclaw, but I really do think it belongs in the list. Even though, to be frank, the +1/+1 counter synergy in this deck, it exists, but it is not much of a focus. It's very, very, very tertiary. I'm not sure exactly what word to use there. It's just really not a focus, although there are some multiple synergies in the deck that involve +1/+1 counters for Surik and Goreclaw. the fact that it essentially just gives generic haste to things on board, it is effectively a 5 mana increase cost of another card I'm playing. It has the advantage of it's a creature. It has the advantage of it being a creature and therefore much more tutorable than a 1 mana enchantment. But it is really just a glorified 5 mana increase on the Concordant Crossroads, and I still think it's good enough to play. That's how much I'm valuing haste, and why am I valuing it that way? So if you have Emiel on board, either Surik and Goreclaw or Concordant Crossroads, right? Any haste enabling, any one of those haste enablers, and Emiel, and then any dork that's tapping for more than 3 mana, right? So 4, 5, etc. mana, then that's just immediately infinite mana, right? Like Selvala is one example, right? So if you have Emiel, Surik and Goreclaw, and Selvala is netting you, what, 5 mana, right? Taps for 6, but then you have to pay 1 into it, so Selvala is netting you 5, and you go infinite that way. But it doesn't need to be Selvala. It could be Circle of Dreams Druid. It could be a plethora of other cards. So that's kind of the logic between these haste enablers. And even outside of their combo, they're extremely valuable, right? Like if you play a turn 1 Concordant Crossroads, your turn 2 Priest of Titania or some other similar mana dork is just a higher value card. And I'm hoping this deck I'm confident this deck is fast enough to not really care about the downside, specifically for Concordant Crossroads, of giving your opponents haste. Right? Of course, if they're playing dorks, that's a downside. If they're just hasting in creatures to attack you, it won't matter. The deck's fast enough to just beat people that are trying to win through fair combat. Another major combo to discuss is the Ashaya Corian Ranger Lotus Cobra combo. It's ironic because literally a few days ago I cut Lotus Cobra, but it's fine. I'll explain in a second. So there's a functional copy of Lotus Cobra in the deck now, but let's just explain this combo. So Ashaya makes all your creatures lands. Corian Ranger says it doesn't make them all lands. Ashaya specifically makes all the creatures, all non-token creatures, forests in addition to their other types, right? So all your creatures will be forests. There's no real tokens in this deck. So all your creatures are forests. That includes Ashaya, by the way. Corian Ranger says return a forest you control to its owner's hand, right? So instant speed, no summoning sickness on this card, right? Return a forest you control to its owner's hand, untap target creature, activate only once each turn. That last line of text, activate only once each turn, is completely broken with Ashaya, because the once per turn restriction wears off after the permanent has left the battlefield. And so what you do, forget Lotus Cobra for a second, just these two cards, Ashaya Corian Ranger, is infinite ETBs and leave the battlefield triggers, because Corian Ranger is itself a forest with Ashaya in play. And Ashaya is in of itself essentially a mana dork because it's a forest, or really any other creature. Emiel is a forest. It can tap for green mana. So, but just these two in play with Ashaya not having summoning sickness, you have Ashaya on board. You tap it to play the Corian Ranger. Corian Ranger is itself a forest, and so you activate Corian Ranger, returning itself, the forest, to your hand to untap Ashaya. And then Ashaya is now untapped. It can tap for a green, replay the Corian Ranger. It is now a new permanent recognized by the Magic game state, and so it doesn't see that it's already activated this turn, because that was a different permanent named Corian Ranger. And you just continue the loop, and you get, in this case, no mana, right? You're breaking even on mana. You just get infinite ETBs and LTBs. If you add in like Lotus Cobra or the new 3 mana Nissa, which I cut which I put in its place, then for each landfall you get mana, which now you're generating infinite of both colors, right? Both green and white in that loop, and then you should have no problem winning the game from there with infinite mana and Emiel on board, right? Okay, we're about 25 minutes in the video. Very last combo to explain, I think, at least I think is the last combo, is Yisan. So, oh, actually, I'm sorry, I skipped one. One of the ones I skipped was Selvala Seed Cradle Witch. I should go over this. This is another really clean 2-card combo. Just like the Devoted Druid and Vizier of Remedies, or Devoted Druid and Swift reconfiguration. This is just a clean 2-card combo. Selvala, I'm not going to read the card. Selvala, Heart of the Wild. I think people know what it does. Pretty famous. Absolutely stellar mana dork. But in concert with Seed Cradle Witch, why is that? Why is Seed Cradle Witch not appearing? Oh, that's strange. Okay, it should be appearing as zoom in when I hover over Seed Cradle Witch. I'm not sure why it does that, but Seed Cradle Witch. Maybe I'll go back to the deck list. This. Where's my Seed Cradle Witch? Here it is. So Seed Cradle Witch, you can see it here. It's pay 2 green white, colon, untap target creature, and that creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. This goes infinite with Selvala. If you have, after resolving Seed Cradle Witch, you need, I believe, 5 mana to go infinite, because 4 of it untaps Selvala, makes it a 5 power creature, right? +3/+3. So you resolve Seed Cradle, you pay 4 to untap Selvala, then Selvala is a 5 power creature, and then you need that extra 1 mana, so that's why you need 5 mana total after resolving Seed Cradle to win the game, because 4 to untap Selvala, the last green floating, hopefully, will go into Selvala's activation cost. There's Selvala down here, right? That last mana that you would hopefully have floating would go back into Selvala's activation cost, and then add X mana, where X is the greatest power amongst creatures you control. Presumably that's now the new Selvala, which is now 5 power instead of 2 because of Seed Cradle. And then, so now you, after tapping Selvala for the second time, you now net 5 mana, which fully pays for both Seed Cradle and the activation of the next Selvala, which is now not a 5 power creature, it's an 8 power creature, etc., etc. You generate infinite green and white mana through that. And the beauty of that combo, the true beauty, it took me a long time to realize this, but the beauty of that is it's actually just a 2-card combo. You literally don't need anything else on your board state or in your hand after that. You don't need Wall of Blossoms, you don't need Emiel, you don't need anything. Because once you've generated infinite green and infinite white, then, like, let's say Emiel's not in play, it's in your command zone. Hopefully you're not shut down by a Drannith Magistrate or something. If you're allowed to cast Emiel, once you generate infinite green and infinite white, then you cast Emiel from the command zone. Once Emiel's in play and you've got infinite mana, the really cute thing that I recognized is you can then flicker Seed Cradle Witch. When Seed Cradle Witch enters the battlefield, it will trigger Selvala. Selvala has a passive ETB thing. It says whenever another creature enters the battlefield, its controller may draw a card if that creature's power is greater than each other creature. So this is an intervening if, I believe, right? It has blah blah blah, trigger conditions, and then an intervening if in the middle of that statement. So it will always trigger anytime another creature enters the battlefield. It guarantees its trigger. It just won't resolve the effect unless, that's why there's that intervening if there. It will only resolve the effect if the condition that it's asking for, namely that the creature entering is the largest on board, you'll only draw if that is met after the trigger's already hit the stack. So the really important thing about this rules lawyering here is that you flicker Seed Cradle with Emiel. Selvala triggers, even though Seed Cradle's a 1/1, it will trigger and then check for legality of the resolution once the effect is actually able to leave the stack and try to resolve. But we're going to hold priority with that trigger on the stack, right? So Emiel flickers Seed Cradle. We let that effect resolve. Selvala triggers. We do not let that resolve. In response to Selvala's trigger, you pump an infinite mana, or not infinite, you pump as much mana into Seed Cradle as you need to, targeting itself. So you untap, you give +3/+3 and untap Seed Cradle enough times to where it's the largest creature in play, which is guaranteed because you have infinite mana, right? And then at that point you let the Selvala trigger resolve. And no matter how large Selvala is, or anything else on the board is, Seed Cradle is then the largest creature, you draw a card, and then you can just repeat that process. You flicker Seed Cradle, it's a 1/1, then you pump it through its own effect to meet the Selvala trigger, and then you just draw your deck, obviously, right? So very cute. I wanted to go through that explanation. But back to the, where is it? My primer. Back to the things I wanted to mention. So I've already touched on the Ashaya Quran Ranger thing. I think the very last one, and I want to move on to other topics here for combos, is Yisan. So I'm considering Yisan a one-card win con in this deck, and it's slow. It's not terribly fast, but I think it's valuable to have one-card win cons. In the sense that this just fully assembles a complete combo in of itself. It just takes a lot of mana. So, and spread out probably across multiple turns. The main way that I utilize Yisan, because it is a deterministic combo finder, right? Like, what is Yisan effectively doing? I don't want to. This video is gonna be super long if I read every single card, but I'll let you maybe pause and read Yisan if you would like. Effectively, what it's doing is you pay 3 mana, you get a 1-drop, and then you pay 3 mana, you get a 2-drop, then you pay 3 mana and get a 3-drop. Just going from 1, 2, and 3, you have a guaranteed win, pretty much, because the main line that I go for is the Yisan on 1 is going to get me a Mother of Runes. That's not the most aggressive line. You could probably win quicker if you don't go for Mother of Runes, but because this is a bit of a slow combo assembler, I would like to have protection, and Mother of Runes just completely stops instant speed 1-for-1 interaction from kind of working. And it's also not a dead tutor target, because Yisan on 2, the subsequent activation, is going to get a crucial card in this deck, or at least often feels like it's crucial. I'll go back to my deck list. Catilda, Dawnheart Prime. So Catilda is an absolute stellar card. It is more than a single mana dork. Actually, we can answer this question right now through the power of Moxfield. You can see I have 21 humans in this deck exactly. And Catilda is not only a 2-mana mana dork for both colors, it makes all humans, all of my other humans, mana dorks for whatever colors they have. So the beauty about this Yisan line is Yisan on 1 gets Mother of Runes, which is a human, and so later will become a mana dork, because what we're trying to work towards is a Village Bellringer win. So Mother of Runes for Yisan on 1. Yisan on 2 gets Catilda, which now you have generated essentially two mana dorks. And you can probably guess what Yisan on 3 is. Yisan on 3 goes and gets your favorite Village Bellringer. The beauty of this is all 4 cards are humans. So Yisan itself is a human, right? Where is it? Yisan right here. Yisan's a human. Mother of Runes is a human. Catilda's a human. And technically Village Bellringer is a human as well, but that's less relevant because of summoning sickness and whatnot. So if you have another human in play, or even if you don't, if you have to use the Village Bellringer, or if you have a Crossroads or whatever, as long as you have one other mana dork in play, or just one other human, it could be a Grand Abolish or whatever it is, then you just go infinite, because you can stop. Essentially what we're doing is we're converting a Mother of Runes into a mana dork. We're converting Yisan itself into a mana dork. So once you go through that whole Village Bellringer combo, you need four or more mana, right, to actually go infinite there. And Yisan is now, instead of being a tutor thing, it is now supplying a mana dork slot, and potentially Mother of Runes if you need it. Obviously, you would prefer to not need to tap Mother of Runes, because that's your combo protection. But you may need to just go for it if the window is there. Okay, so I think I've explained most I want there. I think that's really all there is to say about combos. Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry. I didn't explain all of them. So I talked about how Nissa is a cut for Lotus Cobra. It's functionally the same. It's 1 extra mana, but you have additional upside with potentially some card advantage. But more importantly, not only is it card advantage, it's potentially tutoring, right? Because it only finds elves and elementals. This is something I'm playtesting. I'm in the very early stages of playtesting a 1-for-1 swap of Lotus Cobra and Nissa, both of which go infinite in the Ashaya Quran Ranger combo. My early understanding of it is I think it's probably going to be better, but I just want to caveat this deck slot with I'm still a little bit in the playtesting stage. This is a very recent change. So I just want to throw that out there. Oh, I did forget another really important thing. How do we actually win once we draw our deck, right? This is probably something I should explain. White Plume Adventure is the answer to this. White Plume Adventure is actually a really fantastic Magic card, even outside the infinite mana combo, at least in my opinion. especially in a deck that's built this way. You can see I'm on Seedborn Muse, which I hope I don't need to explain that. The deck plays a lot of mana dorks, a lot of lands, and then you have a you have a sink of mana. Even if the mana is finite, you have a ton of you have a pretty much endless mana sink that you can get value out of. So Seedborn Muse to me makes a ton of sense. White Plume Adventure is a worse Seedborn Muse, but for 2 less mana. It also immediately cantrips into a basic land, which I love. I'm on a very low land count, so I love cards that guarantee cantrip into land. That's wonderful. Like to hit our land drops. But most importantly, right, why am I saying it cantrips into a land? If you just read the dungeon that you take the initiative into, then, the first mode is get a land. The reason that White Plume Adventure wins the game, right, like the infinite mana through whatever means you get infinite mana, and if you, let's say, have a Wall of Blossoms or something to draw your deck, the reason this is a guaranteed win is you eventually draw into you hit White Plume Adventure. Hopefully you have 1 white pip to get down the White Plume Adventure. The reason I say that is sometimes you have infinite green mana, and you might not have white mana, so you might have to find some other avenue. But if you can spend the 1 white pip for White Plume Adventure, then you can infinitely flicker White Plume Adventure, and you can infinitely go into the same dungeon. And maybe I should show you, just to prove to you. Here is the dungeon. I will zoom in on this so you can read it. Here's the dungeon, so you can read each room. They're all pretty decent. There's a general track that I have that I won't go into here, but the most important one, the thing that actually wins you the game, is Trap. Target player loses 5 life. So the important thing that you should understand from a rules perspective is once you enter this dungeon, you have to go through rooms sequentially, you can't backtrack. Once you finish the dungeon, there's nothing stopping you from going back into the dungeon the next time you gain the initiative, or flicker the White Plume Adventure, whatever. And then once you re-enter the same dungeon, you can do whatever you want, obviously. So the idea is once you have infinite mana, White Plume Adventure, you infinitely go through the same dungeon, and the only room that matters is target player loses 5 life. There's no risk of decking out either, even though one of the rooms is draw a card. You can infinitely do this because you can just avoid the room that says draw a card. If you're for some reason worried about decking yourself or something, you can just do first room doesn't do anything once you've exhausted your basics, and then +1 counters, goad, or 1 skeleton, and then the last ability, which won't deck you out. So definitely a deterministic infinite win there, and a much preferred deck slot for me than a Crater Hoof. I've just been loving White Plume Adventure, whereas Crater Hoof can feel like a dead card almost always. At least in this high power of a deck. If you go a little bit lower in power where you're not so turbo on the infinite game plan, then Crater Hoof is a stellar Magic card. Okay, so that's really all. Well, I keep lying to myself. I keep saying I'm going to stop talking about the combo lines. There's a few more things I should just discuss so that they're not super confusing. I promise I'll be quick on this. Cryptolith, right, and Elven Chorus. The reason I'm listing them as combo pieces probably self-explanatory. They're in the ramp package as well, right? They're just transforming our creatures into mana dorks, but they're absolutely stellar, right? They're exactly what you want to see. These are 2-card combos with Village Bellringer, right? Doesn't matter what creatures you have in play. If you have Village Bellringer and then these Cryptolith, right, or Elven Chorus, these things that transform your otherwise Wall of Blossoms creatures into mana dorks, then it just trivially meets that 3 plus 4 or more mana condition for the Village Bellringer win. So I won't say anything more about those. Those are amazing Magic cards that you want to be mulliganing for or seeing as early as early as possible, excuse me. Last card that I won't say too much on, but I want to put a big asterisk next to this is Agatha's Soul Cauldron. This is a very new card from the time of recording and also just my own playtesting purposes. I think Agatha's Soul Cauldron deserves a deck slot, but I'm in the very, very early stages of testing it, and to be very honest, I haven't tested it a single time in a real-life Magic game. Just with my life circumstances, I don't get to play a lot of paper Magic in person with people, and so most of my deck testing is actually just goldfishing and running over and over and over again, seeing as many cards in many scenarios as possible, and kind of envisioning realistic scenarios to play against. And Agatha's Soul Cauldron doesn't play into that very well because although it can be it can definitely be a combo piece that synergizes with a lot of the things the deck is doing, especially with like a sub-theme of +1/+1 counters. It is also just generic grave hate, and it would be it's the only generic graveyard hate at instant speed that's interacting with your opponents, and of course that's not something you can goldfish. So I just want to put an asterisk next to that. Outside of like, there's only like maybe like 2 cards in this whole deck list that I'm not extremely confident on. Agatha's Soul Cauldron is one I'm not extremely confident on, and then another one is Delny. I always want to say Delaney, but Delny, Streetwise Lookout. This card is also too new for me to feel comfortable about. I want to say it deserves a deck slot. I think it's good enough, but it's just a scenario of it got printed so recently that I haven't had the time to playtest. So I want to put it on your radar, but pretty much just those 2 deck slots are the only thing I'm not extremely confident in. I think everything else is well tested, and I've played a bunch. Okay. And yeah, I think I'm not interested in explaining every single deck slot. I think I went through in extreme, excruciating detail, perhaps, in this former video, this definitive Emiel the Blessed combo deck on my page. Again, it's a little bit outdated, but if you really want to see me kind of blabber on and on about every single deck slot, then you're welcome to. I think I'm not going to say anything about the RAM package, anything more than I did. I said a lot about stacks in my last video on this deck. I'm not going to say anything about it. If you don't like playing stacks, or your play group doesn't like stacks, you can cut them for whatever else you want to put in the deck. It's not a problem. You can tailor this however you like, obviously. There's tons of card advantage. A lot of it's self-explanatory. I don't think I need to say anything on that. In fact, yeah, I think I'm pretty much done. So how about we don't let this video go any longer on the deck tech, and let's actually just see this in action. So let's just immediately, let me go and close these other windows. Let's immediately get into some playtesting. So I want to show you a little bit, this deck in action. I want to show you a little bit of guides to mulligan, kind of talk through a little bit of my thought process. And yeah, this is just gold fishing, right? This is not like me playing a real commander game, but it's the best we can do, at least in this scenario. So looking at this opening hand, and by the way, I'm a big mulligan believer. Like, if you're playing a lower power casual deck, then mulligans can be kind of, you can kind of just take them frivolously. It doesn't much matter. I guess nothing really matters. But in a deck like this, you really want to be, as you get more and more comfortable with the list, you really want to be stringent, and you only want to be accepting hands that are extremely good if you know the deck is really good. So this hand, what is it doing for us? It's got plenty of lands. It's got 3, arguably 4 lands in it already because of bounce land. It has some strong cards. Fauna Shaman is a guarantee, like arguably a guaranteed 1-card win con, because Fauna Shaman's a double tutor. So this hand could win. Let's see, turn 2 Fauna Shaman, turn 3 finds Devoted Druid and plays Devoted Druid, and then turn 4 you're winning. Let's make sure that's right. Turn 2 Fauna Shaman, turn 3 Devoted Druid, turn 4 Vizier of Remedies, and there's no guaranteed win after that because we don't have a sink for the mana. We don't have like a Wall of Blossoms or anything. But we could keep this. Potentially, let's try it. Yeah, I think this might be good enough just because Fauna Shaman's the saving thing in this hand. But let's go ahead and play this out. Okay, our first draw of the game is Wall of Blossoms. Okay, so now it's a pretty much guaranteed turn 4 win. Let's just play it out to help you guys see. So turn 1, I'll go grab myself a forest. Turn 2, we play a land. Oh, I forgot about the bounce land. Maybe that screws up my mana. Did forget about that. We play a turn 2 Fauna Shaman. Okay, we do not find the 3rd mana source necessary to hit the Devoted Druid, so that's not ideal. I guess I'm dumb and stupid for playing bounce lands, right? So yeah, here we can't jam the Devoted Druid, which is unfortunate. We can protect the combo, though, by setting up a Mother of Runes. Yeah, there's some decent things we can do here. Let's go ahead and drop the Mother of Runes, bounce this land back, and then on our opponent's end step right before our turn, let's go ahead and activate the Fauna Shaman. Going to find, I think, Devoted Druid here. So Aerial Extortionist is a more slow, grindy value piece, so we're just going to ditch that. Go find Devoted Druid. Just can't spell. And that's at the end step before our turn. We'll untap draw. We have an untapped, oops, wrong card. Untapped Sun Petal Grove, land for turn. We've got 4 mana. So we jam Devoted Druid. And we have protection from instant speed removal through Mother of Ruins. And it looks like we have a guaranteed win next turn. It's unfortunately 1 turn slower just because of the bounce land stumble that we had. But this is totally fine. You could play out Seed Cradle Witch. I'm not sure it matters much. I guess I will, but it doesn't really matter. It's probably correct to not play it. Who knows? But then, yeah. We pass our turn. Instant speed on the end step before our turn, just to delay the information giving to people. We'll go ahead and discard something. Doesn't much matter. I guess we discard Knight Errant Evios. We'll go find a Vizier of Remedies. And this poses a nice little demonstration as well. I know I've kind of already explained the combo out loud, but we'll untap a draw and I'll explain a caveat, because the deck, it's easy to say how things win, but viscerally experiencing it and seeing scenarios that will be constant hurdles is a great learning moment. So here's one that's about to happen, which is about managing white pips and sources of white mana for actually translating winning hands to actually winning the game. Because a lot of times this deck will have pretty easy ways of generating infinite green mana, but not as easy avenues to getting both infinite green and white. And the main reason why this is super important is because you must hit the 2 white pips for Emiel, right, to actually translate the mana to a win. And so let's just see this play out. We tap the bounce land for Vizier of Remedies, and we now have fully infinite green, right? No question about it, we have infinite green, but before my land drop, I really only have this 1 white source. So hitting this extra white source, right, so here like this win right here requires 3 white pips. 1 for Vizier of Remedies, 2 for Emiel, and we are just barely hitting that, right? We just hit the 2 white to cast Emiel, and Emiel's necessary, right, because now with Emiel in play, with our infinite green, we slam down the Wall of Blossoms, we draw a card, and now we just flicker the Wall of Blossoms over and over again. It doesn't matter that we don't have the white source to play the white plume, because obviously infinite green mana and infinite card draw, so I could draw my whole deck, but drawing my whole deck's not important because I can just play the Sarakin Goreclaw and then draw the deck until we hit White Plume Adventure. I'm not going to actually do that because that's silly. I'm just going to tutor up White Plume Adventure. We're going to draw until we hit this card, play White Plume Adventure, and then flicker that and drain everyone for game. So that's, you know, a bit of a clunky, we had a clunky bounce land issue, but even with that, it's a turn 5 win. And with optimal lands in the correct order, we would have had a turn 4 win. So let's go ahead and do maybe one more, and then maybe we conclude this video. Ooh, this is a super interesting hand. So this hand does not have a quick avenue to winning. If I were playing and, you know, if I was not really trying to prove myself, like if I'm not in a tournament, of course none of us are really in tournament settings, right, with Casual Commander, I would probably keep this hand because it looks super fun and also I think very strong, right? Again, land tax is an absolute powerhouse. It's enabling us to keep a 1-lander, which is just amazing. And this is just a great 1-lander because you have turn 1 land tax, you get an immediate +3 in card advantage next turn, and then you slam a Giver of Runes mana dork, and then after that you're hitting an Aura Shards on turn 3 plus another body to trigger the Aura Shards, and you're just demolishing people's artifacts and enchantments. You're generating tons of card advantage, you have a mana dork, and then you have Generous Patron to even draw more cards. So this hand's doing a lot of strong stuff. I'm gonna mulligan it just because I want to show more of the combo aspects, because this hand, although it has a lot of removal through Aura Shards and a pretty decent opening play, there's no clear ability to win the game. So we'll go ahead and mulligan. Okay, this hand is pretty pretty land heavy, pretty lackluster. 5 lands is not quite what you want to see. It's got a tutor, which isn't really strong, but we'll have to unfortunately mulligan that. So that was our hand of second 7. Now we're going to 6. And we are getting punished on 1 land. This hand would be stellar if it had a single other land. Yeah, I mean, this is a absolutely stellar hand if you have a single extra land. I mean, you've got Dorks for Days. Essentially what you should be mulliganing for this deck is honestly just early mana Dorks. You would also obviously like to have some other things like tutors and card advantage, but really the early game mana Dorks are the most important thing. You really, really want that mana acceleration, because it's not just mana acceleration, it translates into later down the road more card draw, because, you know, if you top deck a Spirited Companion or a Wall of Blossoms, then that now represents multiple cards to be drawn, because you can slam Emiel, and then you can just kind of, whenever you want to dump 3 mana into drawing a card, you can flicker the Wall of Blossoms, right? And they're also combo pieces, because you can, at any time, top deck a tutor and go find Village of Bellring. Okay. So this hand would be great. Unfortunately, you have to mulligan this. It'd be cool to see the top. Okay, the top card is a land, but it's actually not a functional land with Bastion. So yeah, obviously mulligan. It looks like we're going to 5. And yeah, this might just be a complete mulligan hole here. We go to 4. Okay, this is actually, at least I think I counted right. You guys will have to let me know if I counted that incorrectly. This is a hand of 4. So this is a keepable hand. What is it? 2 lands. I mean, honestly, this is actually not a bad. If I'm correct in counting this to a mulligan of 4 while recording a video, it can sometimes be hard to think and talk at the same time. I would love to keep this Aether Vial to show demonstrations of why it's such a strong card for opening hands, but let's keep honest to ourselves. Let's go ahead and mull this and keep a hand of 4 and see how good this is. Yeah, actually, no, I shouldn't crack that. There's reasons to hold lands in this deck, and maybe I can show you guys why in a second. So we have turn 1 birds. Okay, hitting more lands is not a good thing. You have turn 2 Bloom Tender, and then here I'll demonstrate why holding fetches can be great sometimes. Right, so 1, 2 for Bloom Tender, right? You don't need to hit an untapped source. And what I would do here is instant speed on the end step before my turn. I would go find a Dryad Arbor. Dryad Arbor, you can see, just got us past the threshold for winning with Village Bellringer, right? So I no longer need to draw. Well, actually, excuse me. We do need one more white. We need a white permanent for Bloom Tender to actually be tapping for 2. But the one copy, the existence of a fetchable Dryad Arbor in this deck is kind of huge, because it always represents. Sure, it has Summoning Sickness, but it always represents another quote-unquote mana dork to go find, and can just be that extra difference to get you to the 4 mana plus for Village Bellringer purposes. Not to mention being able to trigger things like what's it called, Guardian Project, Welcoming Vampire. These triggers, these triggers that draw you cards, right? We'll do that fetch. That's turn 2. Make sure our deck is shuffled. Untap draw. Oh my god. Okay, what a top deck. So even mulling to 4, right? Even mulling to 4, turn 3. This is really not a bad situation to be in. An Eldritch Evolution off the top. How can we translate this to a win? You have to forgive me. I'm gonna have to think for a second. This is a scenario, even with all my hours, never quite had this scenario of mull to 4. Top deck an Eldritch Evolution with this essentially no hand to speak of. We've hit our land drop for turn. So we're really just dying for card advantage. Eldritch Evolution can find the Village Bellringer, but that doesn't win us the game. We can't hit Emiel plus Eldritch Evolution. We could potentially play Emiel and just pass and hope we top deck any other creature. That might be the line, right? You could slam Emiel, pass, do nothing else. If we top deck any creature that's not 1,000,000 mana, we could play it, sack it to Eldritch Evolution, find Village Bellringer, get infinite mana, but then we don't have a draw outlet. So that line is not terribly, not perfect. The fail-safe scenario, if you really want to guarantee a win, even if it's slow, the fail-safe scenario here, I suppose, is sacking Birds of Paradise to find Yisan, because Yisan is a self-contained one-card win con. That's very slow, though. So I kind of think the correct play here is actually just to bide your time. It's only turn 3. It's not like we need to be winning this turn, or maybe even next turn. So I think here we just tap for, tap for 4 mana, play Emiel and pass. And then hope we draw a creature here, which would open up the possibilities to actually winning. So we untap and draw on turn 4, and of course it's a land, so that's not good. It is a land that protects our combo pieces, though. Shout out to Yavmai Hollow. Extra little combo protection from instant speed removal. But yeah, we really need to present something here. It won't be a win. But I think the game plan here, and this one's actually a really hard one to figure out what's optimal, because we have essentially nothing in our hand except this one Eldritch Evolution. The only two that I can really see of reasonable lines here. Oh no, that's a lie. I just thought of something else. Okay, never mind. I was gonna say it's a toss-up between you either go for the very slow guaranteed win through Yisan, right? You sack birds to go get Yisan. And that'll do it for you eventually. I think the better line is to go find an ETB tutor creature, which can not only serve the purpose of the outlet for the infinite mana, but also help us find the infinite mana for next turn. So what I'm thinking here, and unfortunately we have to lose a dork, which is meaningful for the Village Bellringer purposes, but let's go ahead and do... let's tap this way, right? So tap for 3, sack the birds to go find a 1/2 mana value creature, so 3. I think the Recruiter of the Guard is probably the target, because now it's not a Wall of Blossoms, but it's something that is an outlet for the mana, right? So ETB, find something toughness 2 or less, defend your hand. That, if you have infinite mana, you can flick at that to find Spirited Companion or whatever else, and then have that be the outlet. So it's our outlet for winning, and it can also just tutor into the next way that we're going to try to win the game. So I think, what are we finding here? I think the Recruiter of the Guard probably goes and finds Fauna Shaman, which might seem super convoluted. And again, this is gold fishing, right? So if I was actually playing real opponents, I might feel like this is too greedy of a line, and I might have to actually just find something different, maybe like a, who knows, a Solitude. If I need to interact, maybe I'd go find a Solitude or something. But if we're just gold fishing, Fauna Shaman looks like should guarantee us a win. Should guarantee us a win next turn. The problem is I would like to find Village Bellringer here, and Recruiter of the Guard can't find Village Bellringer. But I've kind of hit 2 birds with 1 stone here, right? Eldritch Evolution found me my outlet, Recruiter of the Guard. And then Recruiter of the Guard immediately found, and I was able to play the Fauna Shaman, and Fauna Shaman finds Village Bellringer, and we can win next turn, I believe. Yes, and you'll have to see how in a second. So we'll just pass turn, and sure, our deck is shuffled, untap, draw. Okay, cool, we got some protection. Oh, also, I just realized I forgot to play my land last turn, right? 1, 2, 3, yeah. So, oops, talked about that, but the deck doesn't need to hit land drops anymore. So it's turn 5, we haven't missed any land drops, we've been flooding a little bit. So, forgot my land drop last turn, but it won't matter. So, we tap a green. Oh, and I'm just now realizing I don't have a creature to discard for the Fauna Shaman. So, oops, I made a mistake. But hey, that's life. So this last gold fishing session is actually really illustrative. Shows you that I'm still learning. Some scenarios are extremely complicated. Sometimes you have to mull to 4, and it kind of sucks. But had I been, maybe talking out loud is a little bit makes it a little bit harder to play. But also I just kind of screwed up on certain decisions. And you learn from them. So that's totally fine. I think I'll just stop there. Rather than belaboring this point any longer. And we're just about at the hour mark, so probably a good time to just kind of wrap things up and call it here. So I'm hoping that was helpful for people. Again, if you want to hear things from me in the future, I'd be happy to make more videos. Just let me know down in the comment sections what you guys would appreciate hearing or seeing. Definitely let me know. Also, specific to this deck list, if anyone feels like they have a good idea of what I'm trying here and have either deck suggestions or just criticisms of the deck list, like constructive feedback or critiques of certain deck slots, I've spent so much time trying to kind of perfect this deck list, but if people think certain choices are silly or suboptimal, I would seriously love you to let me know down in the comment sections. I'm always trying to optimize and learn and make this, improve this deck list, and I value everyone's feedback. So please do, if you find a card that's suspicious, you don't think deserves a deck slot, please let me know. I'd be happy to hear you out, and I'd love for you to change my mind and make the deck even better. So not only will I be able to win more, I can inform other people and they can win more, and it'll just be wonderful. So please do give some constructive feedback on this deck, and also just making videos in general. Let me know what you liked and didn't like, and I think we will call it there. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Have fun playing Emiel the Blessed. Bye, guys.